So we have been on a bit of a roll as of late. I've spent some time sharing some slab comic books with you, starting with the 9.8s, moved on to the 9.6s, then the 9.4s, and now it's all about the 9.2s. Stay tuned to this video. Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to dig into the 9.2 slabs in my collection. And I have to tell you, there aren't that many of them. I was very surprised as I went into my boxes to dig the books out for this video and realized that I only had 8 total 9.2s. I assumed that there were going to be a lot more than that, but I guess it's something in my favor because I have a healthy number of 9.8s and 4s and 6s, so I can't be too disappointed. But I only have 8 books, so let's go ahead and dig into these 8 that are sitting in front of me. Back when I lived in Maryland, the second time around, I used to spend some time at a comic book shop in Waldorf, Maryland, if you guys know where that is. And I was, kind of getting back into the groove of collecting. It didn't last too long, but I was getting back into the groove. And one day I ventured in and picked up this book off of the shelf. It was X23 #1, and pretty nice book. I have NYX as well, that whole series of books which have done incredibly well in terms of value. But I picked this one up off the shelf, and of course it has white pages at 9.2, and of course X23 goes on to become the new Wolverine. Speaking of Wolverine, the next book is a perfect segue. Incredible Hulk number 340, another classic battle between Wolverine and the Incredible Hulk. Started back in Incredible Hulk 181 and kind of continues into a series of books, including this one. And this is a 9.2, and I believe white pages as well. Now, what's interesting about this book is I was actually on Instagram earlier today and was scrolling through my feed and came across Todd McFarlane's post. And in this post, he talked about the cover art for this particular book because it caught my attention. It was his original sketch from back in the day. And he talked about how he gave the cover art to the writer on the book because the guy wanted the artwork, so he gave him the artwork with the promise that he would not sell it. So what happened is the guy actually sold the artwork, and Todd didn't say how much the guy made for the artwork, but I think he was a little disappointed that he gave away such an iconic piece of art to someone who made a promise who then broke his promise. So coincidental that I happened to be filming this video on the same day as that post actually went up on his Instagram feed. So I actually picked that book up, I want to say, from a long box back in the day, and I did not pay cover price for it. I paid a couple of bucks for it, but that was one of the books that I picked up while living in Michigan when I was still in high school. When I came back to collecting, I think the second time and the most recent time, the Black Panther was all the rage. So I actually went out and picked up a Black Panther book, and I picked up Black Panther #1 with wonderful story and artwork from Jack Kirby. And so here is Black Panther #1, and this too is a 9.2 with white pages. All right. So recently I ended up picking up finding a guy online, and we had a back and forth about his books, and I ended up driving out about 2 hours to take a look at his collection. And instead of buying the whole collection, we actually came to an agreement that I would go through the collection, pick out a couple of books that I was very interested in. And this was a super meticulous kind of guy. He had an Excel spreadsheet of all his books. He had looked up his values for his books. Everything was bagged and boarded. And so it was a pretty decent collection. And while I was there, I actually picked up the first appearance of Cable, the first appearance of Deadpool, and a couple of other books that I really wanted. And then I left. And I got back home and I started talking to my wife about what the guy had, and I mentioned to her that there were some books that he had that I didn't buy, and she's like, well, why not? And I was like, I guess I was being cheap. So I ended up emailing the guy back. We had a back and forth over the next day or so, and I ended up purchasing some additional books from him, which he actually mailed to me so I would not have to make that drive. Because again, by going there, we had established a relationship. I saw the quality of his books and I did not have to worry about the quality. And thankfully, he had that amazing spreadsheet that I was able to review and know exactly what I was purchasing. So one of the books that I picked up from him, or I should say, what I picked up from him, part of it was a full run of Punisher. And I picked up the full run really because I just wanted one book, and it was the #1 with the Punisher, Frank Castle, on the fire escape, firing a bazooka into an apartment. Why a bazooka into an apartment when everyone else has handguns? Because he's Frank Castle. So this book too is a 9.2 with white pages and a very, very nice representation of this issue. So super pleased to have that book in my possession. Everything else that I picked up from him as part of that book, well, that run of Punisher, sold all of that off, including all the annuals, but kept the #1, sent it off to CGC for a clean and press, and it came back as a 9.2. So the next book that I'm going to show you is not a surprise for anyone. If you've been watching this channel, there's a couple of things that I talk about a lot. It is Spider-Man and it is his black costume. So I offer to you Amazing Spider-Man 252 featuring said Spider-Man in said black costume. A wonderful, wonderful homage cover to Amazing Fantasy 15. Absolutely love this book. Have multiple copies of this book, including some raw copies. And this too is a 9.2 with white pages. Starting to definitely be a theme here. All right, so continuing in that vein of Amazing Spider-Man and his black costume, I offer to you Amazing Spider-Man 300. Unfortunately, this one has, if you read that header up there, small amount of color touch on cover. I did not know that at the time that I actually purchased this book from a guy on eBay. Now, what's funny is I attempted to reach out to the guy after this book came back from CGC, and I saw that it had a small amount of color touch. Could not find the guy. And so I kind of felt like, or I kind of questioned whether this guy took advantage of the situation and sold me a book that he knew had color touch and then disappeared. Fast forward 2 months, I'm on eBay again because I have not lost faith in man. I'm on eBay again. I place an order for a book. And I go to send the guy an email to say, hey, let's talk about how you're going to ship my book because I want to avoid any kind of damage. And so let's talk about it. And when I click the link to contact the seller, who was the seller? The same guy that sold me that 300. So I sent him an email and I said, hey, guess what? The book that you sold me had some color touch. Did you know that it had color touch? And so we had a back and forth. He apologized. He, of course, said that he had no clue that the book had been color touched. And so we had a little bit of back and forth. Then he sends me a text message on my cell phone because I guess at one point we had a conversation via text. I completely forgot about that. He texts me on my phone and he apologized again for selling me this book and promised that he would try to take better care in the future. And now, mind you, it would have been great if he had offered me some money back on the book. I probably would not have taken it because I'm still going to keep the book. I mean, it's still a 9.2 Amazing Spider-Man 300, but I at least felt like it was a genuine and honest mistake because of his actual reaction to the situation. He didn't try to deny it or whatever, where I felt like he was taking advantage of the situation or knew. I felt like it was an honest and genuine mistake. So thankfully he sent another book to me. In that book, I examined it very closely because now I know what to look for. Did not have color touch on it, thankfully. So the next book is one that I want to show, and it is a book that I probably would never have purchased, to be honest with you. The reason that I have it is because I won a contest sponsored by RB3 in the month of June. And as part of his contest, he had a special thing where if you did something, he would throw in a kicker. I, of course, did that thing. And so when I won the contest, thankfully, he threw in the kicker. The kicker was a Suicide Squad #7 signature series, 9.2 white pages, signed by Jim Lee, one of my all-time favorite artists from his days on X-Men. And I feel like Jim Lee is just a cool guy. I like to meet him because I think that he is just an awesome guy to kind of hang out with and to have a conversation with. I've been watching some of his videos on YouTube where he's actually doing sketches, and it's just amazing to see, you know, these little strokes of a pencil turn into a piece of art. And it's a talent that I don't have, but it's like he's carrying on a full conversation the whole time. His hand is just moving and just flicking on the page like I'm doing here. And all of a sudden, this photo just appears. It's amazing. If you guys have not seen it, I encourage you to take a look at Jim Lee's channel. But shout out to RB3 for sponsoring the contest, and then for giving me this kicker opportunity to get my first book signed by Jim Lee. So thank you for that, bud. The last book is kind of something I've already spoken about. It is not the one that I picked up from the same guy that had the Punisher book, but it is one that I've actually had in my collection since I was a kid, back in 91. I picked this book up off the rack. It is New Mutants 98. It is the first appearance of Deadpool, and like all of the others, it is a 9.2 with white pages. So again, a relatively short video of 8 solid books from my collection. And this essentially wraps up the series that I've been kind of doing, where I've been walking through some of the encapsulated slab books in my collection, starting with the 9/8s and then the 9/6s and then the 4s. And we're going to finish things off with the 9/2s. I feel like I'm basically done with this, but I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you are subscribing to the channel, I want to say thank you for that. If you have not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Make it happen. Have a good one.